Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Cinema Savvy. It is myself, George, bringing you a brand new spoiler discussion. And today we are going to be talking about WWE Crown Jewel, which, at the weirdest circumstances, has just finished airing around the world. Of course, the event took place in Perth, Australia, which meant that us in the UK got this at a lovely time of 1 p.m. in the afternoon. And what it unfortunately does mean is that many other people have either had this happen late at night, or if you live in America, you've had it very early in the morning. So if you have been watching it, fair play to yourselves, but we are doing a sported discussion. Now, I would never ever normally rush one of these, but with it being London Film Festival, one of the busiest weeks of the year for us on the channel, I simply do not have time to get this up later on this week. I'm going to be in London tomorrow for a couple of days. I've been meeting friends, Josh, Ren, who have been on these wrestling discussions on the channel before, and I will be with them. But there wouldn't be any opportunities to record, to get something up, and we want to try and get this out there. It's an insanely busy weekend. We've got Tron Aries spoiler discussions to do as well. I've got London Film Festival reviews to edit, to upload. So it's very busy, and this means I've got to get Crown Jewel out the way as quickly as we can. So it's actually quite good that this is in Australia, that it meant I haven't had to miss it as an event and get to it later on in the week. That being said, with it being spoiler discussion, if you haven't seen the event, you do want to watch that event, please stop watching now. But you can comment your thoughts if you have, whatever you want, whether there's events coming up looking forward to, things you're not, storylines these may have set up, things these are teasing. I am very curious about what's going to happen there. So do get involved there. If you like this video, you want to see what else we're up to, where we're posting, our social media, linktree.com/cinemasavvy. That'll put you through to our Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, and Blue Sky. That being said, let's kickstart this. And it's weird doing a wrestling spoiler discussion by myself. Even weirder, in an event that lasted just under 3.5 hours, there were 5 matches. And I guess it's worth pointing out the build-up to this. Obviously, last year they decided to bring in with Crown Jewel that moving forwards, it would now be a pay-per-view where we will have the men and women's champions of each brand going up against each other to give them the Crown Jewel Championship. Some utter nonsense that was involved, obviously, with Saudi Arabia, and this year it's moved to Perth. So, of course, we get a 10-minute opening of them getting all the belts from Saudi Arabia to Australia for this event. And safe to say, I really did not care for the build-up to this. I'm never going to say no to seeing Stephanie Vaquer versus Tiffany Stratton. I'm never going to say no to seeing Seth Rollins versus Cody Rhodes, but the champion versus champion matches, I don't genuinely enjoy that much. I have issues with them more so. I just think it's a not waste of time, but unless there's a good storyline, it's quite damaging. And I'll get into that of one of the two. So that's where I'm curious to hear what people thought of this one. But obviously, WrestlePalooza happened last month, which, you know, it's not unfair to say it was not a highly received event, to the point that even ESPN gave it a poor rating. WWE obviously needs to learn from that as an understatement, because the last thing they want is the people that are now airing them to basically say this product is garbage. I would say overall, my initial thoughts, this was a better event than WrestlePalooza. I don't think it's hard to set that up. WrestlePalooza had really one great match, one very good match, and the rest were just sort of average or below par. Whereas this one itself, I quite liked a few of these, if I'm allowed to say that. It's a different type of event, and kind of with it being an international PLE, the event going for Australia, John Cena's farewell international match, there was a bit more going for it this time round. And I will say this is much better than WrestlePalooza. But when you look at the talent involved, the matches, because if you're having a champion versus champion twice, theoretically, it'd be embarrassing if this wasn't a good show. Let's be really honest here. And I know SmackDown yesterday was very stacked. They had a couple of title matches, some returns, some other things. So they've obviously given Australia a fair go. Raw's going to be in Australia on Monday too. So we'll find out what happens there. And obviously at this point in time, it means they're going to be starting to build up to Survivor Series, which obviously everyone's looking forward to. I do think there's an NXT event, Halloween Havoc first, and I'm pretty sure there is some more stuff happening. But yes, let's get into this properly now, because that's more than enough for an extended intro to give people a chance to make sure they've seen it. As usual, we'll go through the match card. I'll give my thoughts on those matches, any certain spots, anything between. Obviously, it's going to be a lot quicker today with it just being myself on the stream. First up, we had Bronson Reed versus Roman Reigns in an Australian street fight. no problem with this. There's an ongoing storyline between the pair of them. Bronson Reed obviously missed out at Elimination Chamber last year. I think from memory, his partner was pregnant and he was going to miss the birth of his baby if he didn't go. So it's great that he got firstly the opportunity to wrestle in front of the Australian crowd. And I will add, a year and a half later, it's much better for him to have done this here because he's in better storyline and position-wise within the company. I was very critical of the fact he lost to Roman Reigns at the Clash in Paris. We knew Roman was going to go off and film Street Fighter. They had him written off of him and Braun Breaker. This match was fine. I didn't have an issue with it. There were some fun spots, some good spots. Obviously, we get what we assume, which is shenanigans going on with the involvement with the rest of the division. Roman Reigns ultimately losing this match, I don't have a problem with that. Obviously, he didn't lose clean. I saw a post online saying it's the second time in the 2020s he has took a pin. Obviously, the other was to Cody Rhodes. Obviously, that wasn't clean to an extent, but I don't not care in a rude way to that statistic. Obviously, however many of those years with the Tribal Chief, also the amount of shenanigans that went on for him to win those matches, it's great for Bronson Reed. He's the second person to get that pin, and I hope that that can elevate him in his position and that team to get to the next level. If they don't deliver from that, that's where there's going to be issues. So it's up to WWE now, and we know the booking's been not the best this year to put as an understatement. So I'm delighted for Bronson Reed he got the win. Kind of justifies not getting it at Paris. I guess they wouldn't have Roman lose twice in a row to him, even though he essentially lost at Paris because he got destroyed afterwards. But it was a fine match. I don't think there's anything extraordinary about it. It was solid for what it was. It got the Australian crowd going. It was obviously basically just a no DQ match. Throwing the rugby balls was kind of weird. I think that's probably more of a thing like here in England, rugby's normal, cricket's normal. So to get cricket and rugby stuff out doesn't really have an effect on us. Maybe for the American crowd, that's the sort of thing that would wow them. But yeah, it's what it was with that one. But next up, we then had Stephanie Vaquer versus Tiffany Stratton. Obviously, the Raw Women's Champion versus the SmackDown Women's Champion. And this was a weird match, if I'm allowed to say so. I loved the ending. I thought it was a good match between the pair of them. Obviously, it's the first time they've been put in the ring against each other officially in a one-on-one match. Obviously, Stephanie Vaquer's only been here for 15 months and she's already climbed that ladder. Without jumping to the end straight away, which I'm going to do, I think the right winner won. Stephanie Vaquer needed this win more than Tiffy does. I love Tiffy as a champion, but it's fair to say that the SmackDown Women's division is just not up to par at the moment. There haven't been ongoing storylines that are interesting. There's been boring, repetitive feuds. We've seen nothing but Nia Jax and Tiffy Stratton throughout the year, with the odd little bit of other people scattered in because they need to do someone except Nia Jax. And to be frank, this goes back to something I moan about on every video with wrestling these days. They really need to do a draft at least. Shake up the women's division. It's more of an issue on SmackDown than Raw. Raw's got great storylines going on. We'll talk about them a little bit later. But SmackDown is so stale for the women's division. There was no real option but Stephanie to win this because, again, I think she'd have more to lose if she lost this than Tiffy would. At least you can put Tiffany in a position of storyline-wise where they can maybe have some people going after her saying, you know, she wasn't the best of the whole division, etc., 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 and maybe play some games because she has the belt throughout the whole year. And safe to say it's not a championship reign that's really justified that, but I don't think that's her fault. I think it's a fault of the booking of the storylines. Obviously, even with Naomi winning the belt, she then went to the Raw division, which was obviously a great twist, a big shock, and it was lovely for her with her character, but it just feels like SmackDown is so lacking at the moment. There will obviously be call-ups coming soon, and I think SmackDown Women's needs it a lot more than Raw does at the moment. So it was a good match. Feels like I'm being critical, I'm not. It's just they had to get the booking right, and they did. Again, the crowd were on it, the Australian crowd. We know what Australians like. If you know sports, the Australian crowd's decent at a lot of things. So it wasn't surprising they were loud throughout this, as many international crowds are. And next up, this is probably going to be the longest segment of the night. We're going to talk about the match of the night, the best match of today by a country mile, and one of John Cena's best matches of his retirement run so far. We had John Cena versus AJ Styles. I don't really know what to say about this. I thought I was onto something until it was then said on commentary. It was like if you had a creator wrestler on a wrestling game doing everybody else's finishes. I don't mind a spot fest. And you're looking at these two legends. And I've got to actually give WWE some form of credit for this. It's crazy that in the year 2025, we're getting TNA mixed with WWE, that we had the face of the WWE, John Cena, versus the face of TNA, AJ Styles. And to have that acknowledged by WWE on a broadcast in trailers was incredibly surreal still. It was a wonderful match, and it really felt like a big part of the farewell Cena tour. I know so much has already been said about the tour not going as well as we wished it had, the fact that the heel turn didn't go the way it should have, and through that you've sort of basically lost great matches against Randy Orton, CM Punk, to put those two first. Obviously Cody at Mania was terrible, Cody at SummerSlam wasn't terrible, they got to fix it, and now that John Cena's returned as a face, obviously with the awful Brock Lesnar match recently, it was great what they did today. It took it back to the basics, had two veterans in the ring who know they can push each other, they know they can get the best out of each other. And also I'm going to give a shout out that they did a Bullet Club reference, which also caught people off guard. And it wasn't just, sorry, I meant Bullet Club reference. The fact that was said before the match, I thought was very interesting that they allowed that. It wasn't a trailer, it was said. Great way to do these two, to have their final battle with one another. AJ Styles was superb. There only needed to be one winner, and I think because of what happened to Brock Lesnar, because of how awful WrestlePalooza was, we could only really be looking at one winner, which was John Cena. If it wasn't Cena, you'd really be deflating that tour. We know that AJ is going to retire next year. We don't have a date for that. We don't know where that's going to be or what they'll do. I don't think we'll hear any discussions on anyone else retiring until after Cena. They're not going to take anything away from his last couple of months. But I thought this was great. This was probably, after Cena versus Cody at SummerSlam, this is probably my favourite John Cena match of the year. And the problem is, he had great matches with Randy Orton. He had a great match with CM Punk. It was the endings that didn't work because he was in that heel run, and because he was the heel, he had to have endings, and it was my original big criticism. Why couldn't heel Cena still be super? Why can't he win clean as a horrible heel? I understand entertainment audiences, but audiences are smarter than that. We have somebody commenting in Spanish that I have no idea what that means. I'm sure it's about Stephanie Vico, the chili flags. So he'll be very delighted at the result from that one. Good for you, Arturo. And going back to Cena AJ, yeah, it was just the best match of the card, wasn't it? Nothing's going to come close to that. Nothing did come close to that. To put it third, I understand. It was a solid card, because how do you follow up John Cena v AJ Styles? Is that you can't really have it go second after Roman because it's too big to go second, and it kind of made sense to put Tiffy versus Stephanie second. But then obviously then Phil, the main event's going to be the champions versus one another. It has to be. That's the purpose of a show such as this. So if this had been before Seth versus Cody, I think this would have overshadowed it. So did the right thing putting the Kabushi Warriors tag match second last, because that match itself, if I talk about it now, I also thought was great. As you'd expect. I mean, if you're going to put in the ring Asuka, Rhea Ripley, Kairi Sane, and Io Sky, you know you're going to be in for something. On top of the fact they've actually got an interesting storyline going. And this is the problem with an event like Crown Jewel. When 2 of your 5 matches are gimmick matches, i.e. champion versus champion, hooray, you lose storylines naturally through that. Normally we'd expect 6 pay-per-view matches, but there's only 5. The fact it was 5, it was 3.5 hours again. It's outrageous. You got a John Cena retirement tour match that had no build-up. I appreciate it didn't need a build-up. They didn't have any face-to-faces. Obviously, Cena's got shooting. We've had Peacemaker that's out at the same time as well, but that only really gave us 2 spots. We've got Bronson Reed v Roman, which is an ongoing storyline, and obviously Io, Rhea, and Kabuki Warriors is an ongoing storyline too. So I really liked this match. I thought it was good. We know what they're capable of, and I think at this point in the respective storylines where there is still more to come from the 4 involved, I liked it. I don't think it's like the best women's match I've seen this year. Again, we know the talent of all of these involved. In Australia, Rhea Ripley was never not going to be winning. So it was quite predictable. And again, there's nothing wrong with predictable sometimes. It just wasn't drawn out. It wasn't stupid. It wasn't ridiculous. It was a good match at the right time in the story to have that match and have that outcome. And I'm curious to see what the follow-up with this is now, if that's fair to say. And I feel like I'm flying through this. Obviously, I'm doing this video alone today, so I don't get the back and forth with the others. By the way, the people I watch wrestling, none of them have seen this. They're all at the film festival today, so no one has seen this yet. But the main event, if I talk about it now, Seth Rollins versus Cody Rhodes for the Crown Jewel Championship. The Raw champion Seth Rollins, SmackDown champion Cody Rhodes. This was a great match. We know they've had the trilogy. We know Seth Rollins hadn't won any of those. We know that Cody Rhodes is booked as a champion, is an absolute monster. He's lost very few times since his return to WWE. So I was actually really curious what they do with this, because heading into this on paper, personally, I thought Seth Rollins and the Vision needed this win more. If Cody goes 4-0 against Seth in his return run, that really is a bit pointless for Seth. And where Seth is in his respective storylines with the Vision, the fact that Big Bronson Reed won earlier, setting up a weird promo with Paul Heyman, saying not to help him, and if he loses, he loses, that sort of thing. Seth needed to win, and I'm glad he did. I'm glad it wasn't nonsense. I'm glad it wasn't people running out causing distractions. Yes, it wasn't clean, but it also wasn't predictably boring, dirty. The highlight I keep going back to was Seth's Coast to Coast, which was just wild to see him do that. I must add, the Coast to Coast was insane. I know everyone always talks about him before his knee injury, but those are the sort of things we used to sort of see from him. And I really liked him in this. I thought it's great for his character that he's proven he can still do it alone. The fact that he had to, I don't know how many curb stomps he had to do on Cody to get the win. The fact he even did his own version of the Crossroads as well, and he still couldn't pin him at that point in time. I thought it made both of them look strong, as they should as champions, and that's where I have a criticism of the Tiffy match. That match was about 10 minutes long. This one was about 25-30. I appreciate they're not going to run the same, but when the women's champions match is sort of half as long as the others, or a third as long, it looks a bit worrying for what they think of those champions. I know that's a weird tangent to come in on this one, but I'm curious at what follows. There's still a story to tell with Seth and Cody to an extent. The fact he hasn't beaten him clean, they were friends, they used the Rolex. Is that going to be part of Survivor Series? I think it will be. We don't know the teams yet. We don't know what the plan is. There'll be rumors, no doubt, across the next few weeks, or things will start to take shape, but I'm excited at what is to come. But I thought the main event was solid. It's kind of what you expected, but I guess my initial issues with this, which might explain why this is a short review, is it just feels like an exhibition PLE. And I know the international ones are sort of B-tier PLEs, but this was a type of PLE created for Saudi Arabians, but because we're now giving them the Rumbles and the Manias, the crap PLEs that they used to have, that they used to worship, are now being chucked around to the rest of the world. And personally, I think Australia deserves a little bit better. I mean, the Elimination Chamber last year, that was a great pay-per-view for them to have. That was a great pay-per-view. But this one, it's so sterile because, again, you're losing slots to those champion versus champions. And it does open the door of what is next, what is to come. And when the international events do start to pick up, okay, Saudi Arabia is getting Mania in the Rumble, great. No one else is going to get those because no one's going to pay what they do. But I do think it is slightly worrying, if I'm honest, that the B-tier PLEs are really starting to feel B-tier. And they always did. But it just feels off this time around that there's this, maybe because against how the 12 months has gone, nothing really felt special except for AJ versus John Cena. Champion versus champion should be a special moment, but it wasn't. And it wasn't last year. And the women's wasn't this year. And the women's wasn't last year. And I think that's worrying if you're not going to have... I mean, I'm not in a rude way saying, if you're champion versus champion, it was like The Rock versus Stone Cold. That's like a generational thing. And it's... The issue is, the issue isn't the champions. It's the time they're having to go up against each other. And it's a very awkward time for booking. And it's forced narrative. It's a forced feud. And no one really comes out looking that great. There was at least a bit of history with this one today, but it's plain sailing for me. As I said, you're going to get great matches as you'd expect, but you could have also seen Cena, AJ. Most of these you could have seen on the house show across the last couple of years. That's truthfully how I felt. But obviously, we have got one of the big four coming next. We've got Survivor Series. That's obviously going to be massive. We're going to start building up to War Games. Clearly, the Vision's going to be one of the two in there. Who their fifth member will be, we'll need to find out. I doubt they'd put Becky Lynch in with it. But yes, there's a lot going on, isn't there? So that's everything I've got to say on Crown Jewel Perth. As I said, I thought it was fine. It was much better than WrestlePalooza. It was a good pay-per-view. I can't give it anything more than that. It did have two wonderful matches on there. I bet those two wonderful matches would have been at that any time around the rest of the year. So that is me going to be rounding out very politely. We will be back with the next spoiler discussion. I've mentioned on the film festival how busy we are at the moment. It's incredibly busy on the channel. This is my third video today. I have edited 4 videos today, 4 shorts today, and had to pull up artwork for about another 5 or 6 because I'm in London from tomorrow through to Wednesday. There's a lot to do, and it's already 5 o'clock here in the UK. So thankfully this event was on earlier for me, but that is me rounding out. Once again, thank you so much for watching. Take care. I'll see you on the next one.